Coming up, a Sad Styles production.
Hello and welcome. My name is Mikey Ehrenworth, signing on to the Sign Off Frameworth podcast for yet another week. And this is one of those weeks where we're going to sit down with just Brian Ehrenworth, the president of Frameworth, who is joining me now. Say hello.
Hello, guys and girls.
And myself, Mikey Ehrenworth. We're going to be sitting down and talking, just the two of us, as kind of another inside look at the world of sports marketing and sports memorabilia, which is essentially what we had set out to do at the start of this podcast. We've had quite a few celebrities and hockey players and you know, player representatives reach out to us, and we've had them on the podcast because obviously we're not going to say no to that. We want them on as well, but we do love to kind of ground things back to where we started and give everyone a look at a world of the world of sports that exists beyond just the playing fields themselves. So this week, obviously, we're at the time of this recording, we're not quite through the NHL playoffs, but by the time you're going to be listening to it, the playoffs will be over. A team will have been crowned the new Stanley Cup champions, and we have our preferences as to who we would like to see win that. But right now, it's looking as though, you know, Montreal, their backs up against the wall. To kind of put this into perspective as to when we're recording this, they were going into Game 5, and who knows? You know, you guys know, we do not. It's dramatic irony. We're not sure where the series is going to lie, but we're not so focused on whether or not we're happy that the team that won. What I want to do is kind of take us through a journey of the mind of a self-proclaimed marketing mastermind, thinking about what there is to do in the world of sports marketing and sports memorabilia around the time of the Stanley Cup playoffs when the stakes are so high. So I literally want to go through the bracket. I want to start by the initial round and say, these were the teams that were facing each other, and just pick your brain a little bit, you know, where your head's at, who you're cheering for, why you're cheering for them, best case scenario, worst case scenario, which games you're watching, which games are making you cringe, and we'll go from there, and then we'll get into a little bit about how we as a company have to react based on the shifting landscape of the playoffs and how they kind of wind up. So are you on board with this?
I'm on board. It'll be interesting because I got to go back and think about how I was thinking during. So you'll walk me through.
And through the haze of the self-medicated alcohol to get you through some of the worst games.
Exactly.
The first.
Well, you've seen me in the worst of times and the best.
And the best of times. Oh, remind us at one point to tell the story of my dad at the Philadelphia Flyers
Pittsburgh
you don't
Penguins
want to go
game.
Through that. That's a good one. One day, stay tuned. We'll get into it. So we start off. We have Colorado versus St. Louis. This is a pretty easy one, it seems to me, because we have some affiliations with some of the players on Colorado, and you know, a past history with them. Is this a series to you that meant anything? Were you keeping an
big
eye
time.
on it?
So we look at the overall bracket from a business point of view. We have a great relationship with Nathan McKinnon. We represented him exclusively for quite some time, and Nate's a great guy. Very good friends with Sydney, who obviously we represent as well. So we have nobody on St. Louis.
Right.
I mean, we have relationships with players, but not exclusively. So we can get product, and we have product from alumni and current players. But our big ticket would be Colorado, and they were one of the favorites to win.
They were one of the favorites. Now, why don't we talk then, before we get into the other teams, some of the other big ticket teams that we had starting these playoffs. Colorado is obviously one of them. Toronto Maple Leafs, obviously one of them. Montreal Canadiens, also huge for us. And they just so happened, no one has forgotten this yet, to be facing each other in the first round. So one of those teams were going to go. We had some other associations with Tampa because we did a lot with their Stanley Cup gifting last year. Not too much to do with too many of the other teams apart from, well, there's that
Pittsburgh.
little team out in Pennsylvania stepping over the punchline in Pittsburgh. We've had quite a good relationship with Sidney Crosby over the years. Apart from that, your perspective going in, is it more focused on the players we represent on each team, or are you more eager to have a team with whom we've dealt in some sort of gifting program win the cup?
Mostly, well, a little bit of both. Like Tampa, we're in a win-win situation right now. I won't jump ahead, but you know, depending on the team, if Minnesota wins, we got
There's not
nothing.
much we can do there.
And you know, other people have players on those teams that are valuable to them if they win. But for the most part, teams, San Jose or any of those, southern teams, even LA, we have some relationships with Dowdy and we can get access product. But we're always looking for primarily teams to win with our exclusive players that we represent, because obviously we control the marketplace there. And then the second thing is something like relationships that we have with teams that we work very hard at, which is Tampa. We did a significant amount of business with the last Stanley Cup that they won. And, we're just doing generic product, even though we don't have a lot of players. We have access to them, but we don't have exclusive. So we can't control that narrative.
Which is interesting, because then we're relying on our own marketing and product pitches. There's nothing proprietary about what we're coming to the table with. And what's interesting,
except that we're the best at what we do,
exactly.
And that makes our products proprietary because we're always ahead of the curve.
The only ones who can do it, and that's why we got those jobs, and and hopefully continue to. Now it's funny because typically, if you would have asked us, what does Tampa winning the Cup do for you, we may not have said very much because we didn't have an enormous past relationship with them. We got in there and that was great, but it just goes to show that with every team winning the Cup, because they now have everyone going to them, it could open up some new doors. So there is always an element of luck when the Stanley Cup finals are happening, that you could have a Minnesota in there against a Nashville, and it turns out
which
in our
is
favor.
A dead issue for us unless we have built a relationship. Now, many of the teams, because of our NHL licensing, come to us anyway. They know what we've done in the past.
Right.
And then we'll approach them with a whole portfolio of things that we can come to the table with that are ready to go in the event of a win, and we start that at the beginning of the playoffs. Why
don't you give some examples of what those products are? If we're not giving, obviously you've seen the frames out there, you've seen the signed picture of Sidney Crosby holding up the Stanley Cup. Obviously they have to come to us for that. What are the sorts of items that you're talking about here that we would end up doing for a company, and how did we end up getting into that game? Well,
this we were right at the beginning. We're at the forefront. There's a lot of big companies out there have copied our little company, which in a lot of the ways that we've done it. We were the first to ask the NHL for the nets from the game.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And we would take those nets and if a big goal was scored into them, or if it's a playoff net, then we can add that to any piece of product as a collectible to say you own a piece of the net that was used in the Stanley Cup final.
Right.
And that's a big deal to a lot of collectors, and it's not that expensive. So we started asking the NHL for that, and originally they just gave them to us, and then they wanted their cost back. And then other companies started realizing the value of them, so they started asking the NHL. Then we got into a bidding war, and then, we get some now and we don't get some. Now a lot of times the team will pull them out, and then if we're working with the team, they give them to us, because I don't think anybody reacts faster to a win than Frameworth does, including the big companies like Upper Deck, which I don't think is even interested in this type of business, or Fanatics, which can't ramp up necessarily as fast as we can. So this is our forte. Team wins. We're all over this. We can have product shipped out within a week.
Now, it's interesting you bring that up, because you're talking about reacting to the winner. Now, a lot of people may not know this, and I'll use this as an example. There are hats and shirts that get donated to countries that need clothing, for example, that say that the Toronto Maple Leafs would have won this. Maybe not that, because it's essentially, once it gets to the Stanley Cup Finals, for example, they have pre-made
Tampa and Montreal. They'll have championship hats already
for
done.
both of them,
right?
Already, so they pre-do them. If you go to some of these places who may not even watch hockey, they're wearing a championship hat for the Vegas Golden Knights or something like that, because that exists for them
somewhere in Zimbabwe.
Exactly. Like, who knows? You can find them, and I wonder how much those would actually be worth. They may be collector's items, or maybe they're cursed. I'm not sure. But I think, though, that it's important to bring that up, because what we do is similar to that. Before the Stanley Cup Finals are over, we're recording this before anyone has raised the cup over their head, and yet we still have product designed in both cases. And we've already started working with the teams in advance of this to make sure, like you said, we want to be ready, the day or the week that the cup is handed out or awarded, to be shipping these items right off the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't our first rodeo, so we have been doing this so many years. We know what photographs are going to be taken.
Yeah.
you always have the iconic.
There's the team shot.
Team shot on the ice that Wayne Gretzky was the first one.
I was going to say that a lot of people don't know this, but that team shot that every team takes with the Stanley Cup, where everyone is lined up and the goalie's laying down, Wayne Gretzky orchestrated the first one.
That was the first one. So that happens every year. We know that the ice can be melted down and put into little containers, so you have a piece of the Stanley Cup ice. We know that the nets exist. So there's
if you're watching on YouTube, I've got I'm holding that up right there. There's an acrylic puck that we did for the one of the Century games of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Right.
It's own item that we did there.
So we have all those products that we know are going to exist. We send them to the team with maybe another team's or a image in there that says Stanley Cup photo in this place.
Sure.
And all the other things are ready to go. And we're ready to go with those and can produce hundreds, if not thousands of pieces within days of the Cup win.
So I want to now draw a huge distinction between what it's like to watch the Stanley Cup finals as a fan and what it's like to watch the Stanley Cup finals as someone who's in business with this. Now, you talk as a fan about, I remember the Leafs went up 3-1 against Montreal, and all the Leafs fans were saying was, don't say we're going to win. Don't say it. Don't be superstitious. Don't jinx it. It's always don't jinx, don't jinx, don't jinx. We are talking to the Tampa Bay Lightning, for example, and they are placing orders for what happens if they win the Cup, which if you're a player or a fan is sacrilegious.
Yeah.
You don't mention winning it. You don't say you have good chances. You just wait for it to happen and you cheer your heart out. In the world of business, when you want to be first to the punch, you cannot be superstitious about any of this.
And you know what? Even then, you can't think of everything. You're absolutely right. You don't want to be, you got to be ready. Like you said, there's hats being made now that will be sold at a deep, deep discount.
Yeah.
But we have to be ready. So there's that aspect of it. But when you look at teams and you asked how I react to different players, I grew up in Toronto, so I'm at heart, I was always a Toronto Maple Leaf diehard fan.
Sure.
Still love the team. We have players on it, so it makes it easier to justify me rooting for them.
Yeah.
But we went into the first round with Toronto and Montreal.
Yes.
And we represent we represent Shea
Price,
Weber,
Shea
Carey
Weber.
Price, and Josh Anderson exclusively. So we have a big advantage over our competition in that area.
Right.
And the competition would kind of like to obscure the fact that by posting pictures of Carey Price on their website,
Sure.
that they have a relationship with him, but
Right.
that's not the case. We have, and so any new product coming out with Carey Price is going to be from Frameworth.
For sure.
Same with Anderson and Weber. That's big to control three of their best players.
Yes.
In one shot. We also have some Caulfield and Suzuki product, which isn't our exclusive. However, so that would have been big. In Toronto, we represent John Tavares, Mitch Marner, Morgan Riley, and have access to Simmons and a number of other players as well. So in either case, we have a win-win there. So the good news is we know we're going through to the second round. The bad news is one of our best teams is going to be eliminated in the first round.
Yeah.
Okay. So be honest with you, I don't think anybody expected Montreal to do what they're doing now.
I agree.
We're thrilled with that. And then you look at the other team that was disappointing this year for us was Pittsburgh, because it's just Sidney Crosby alone winning another cup is
always huge.
Is almost as big as anything else we could do.
Yeah.
He's got 3 now, so we're okay. But so the big teams in the first round: Pittsburgh, Toronto, Montreal. Those are the biggest ones that we have. And then, we have relationships with teams like Tampa that we know if they get through, we're going to have a lot of work coming from them.
Right.
And then we got to hope that it isn't a team with a very poor marketability.
Right.
Minnesota.
A lot of people would have argued that for Tampa. It's one of those markets that has a diehard fan base, but the memorabilia sales aren't always enormous. And I point to the first few years of Steven Stamkos being in the league. We had an exclusive arrangement with him, or at least was his exclusive?
It was exclusive.
And in spite of how well he had been performing and all the hype that had been brought upon his name when he entered the league, it was hard to find that market for him.
There was no market.
Right.
And Steven Stamkos is an elite player. And we
yeah.
at the same time did a deal with Vinny LeCavalier.
Right.
So I remember flying down to do my first autograph signing with those guys, and there was signage all over Tampa. See Stamkos. It was the marketing that they did for great. And then the first game that I went to, you could sit in any seat in the house.
Wow.
And move around, and because there was nobody in the stands. And actually, that was the same before in Pittsburgh before Sydney got there.
Chicago.
Chicago, right. All those teams were dying.
It shows what winning does for a team and an organization and the economy of an entire city, right? Like now we look at Tampa as that would be great for us if they won. Whereas before we weren't so sure because we'd never been able to test that market or the fans weren't as receptive to the memorabilia. But winning will do that.
Well, tell me how you think Mario Lemieux feels about what happened. He was trying to sell the team when Sydney came.
Right.
Now it's worth 20 times what it was back then or whatever the number is. I mean, it's a gold mine.
Yeah, remember the rumor? Waterloo was the rumor. Pittsburgh could potentially, the Penguins could potentially have moved to Waterloo, which would have been, I mean, no shade at Waterloo, but would have been strange what the league would have looked like had that been the case. Yeah. Another Canadian team. And that leads me into a question that I want to ask about the nationality of the team winning. A lot of people probably think that as a Canadian company, a Canadian team winning the cup is super beneficial to us. What are your thoughts on that?
That isn't necessarily true. As we mentioned, the two teams that we feel very strongly could help our business if they win, it was Pittsburgh and Tampa.
Yep.
Pittsburgh kind of transcends the local market.
Yes.
Minnesota doesn't.
Right.
San Jose, they got a neat logo, but they don't really. LA's a big market, but that's not where the West is not where it is. Colorado's a good market. It's one of the few West teams. Detroit. So an Eastern team is always better for us. We have relationships with it, but we don't do a lot in New York, although I'm talking to the Rangers right now about some things and the New York Islanders. So as we build relationships with the various teams, then we start rooting for them more. But when you're limited, when the scale goes so far one way, when you have certain teams winning,
for sure,
it makes it really tough to watch a hockey game.
I mean, it's funny too, because you would almost think like what the listener might hear when you say that is, well, I honestly any team could win and I could make something out of it. They're like, oh, so you don't even cheer for a team, but that's not it at all. Because like you said, the scales are so much more in favor of the teams that we already have these relationships with that it could mean so much more. Are you even able, and I think I've kind of asked this before, but worded it slightly differently or in a different context. Are you able, or do you find yourself morally being pulled in the direction of like, I should be cheering for this team, but this team is better for us? Like, is there a duality in when you watch games based on your personal preference and the business preference, or is that all just muddled now?
I have to admit that as a diehard Leaf fan all my life, and with some of the great players like Carey Price, I think he's the best goalie in the league. But I have to admit that my relationship with Sidney and how we've represented him and his family since he was 15 years old, my heart's always there.
Sure.
He's my number one pick, and I maybe other players get pissed off at me, but I think they'd understand what he's done for my company.
Well, that's the thing. That has to be clarified. That's not to say that he's your favorite kid or anything like that. What that means is that as a company, we have been through so much with Sidney and his family, that it would be hard to relate that type of growth and experience, the coming up of our company alongside, parallel to Sidney Crosby, means a little bit more than it could ever mean by associating yourself with someone who's maybe a little bit farther on in their career. And this, it's not to say
there's that side of it, which is really important, but it's more than that. I mean, as well as I do, I talk to Sidney's parents on a regular basis.
Right.
My wife, Lori, is very close with the family. We've just built that kind of relationship over the years. Same with Jonathan Taves, who we didn't mention, but Chicago would have been a great series, and it's good to see JT back. He messaged me the other day. It just, people respected him being off for the season, gave him some space. He's coming back next year, and he'll be the same as he always was.
Still just trying to win those cups. I mean, so what you're saying is basically that you will kind of find yourself leaning more towards some teams, not necessarily because of the business side of it, but because there is still that
There's
personal
a personal
element. But what accounts for a personal element has changed for you. It's not just because you're from Toronto. There's more to it.
No. I mean, obviously, if I wasn't in this business, I'd be a diehard Toronto fan, and I wouldn't care. I mean, I'd respect all the other players. I remember going to the games in, what was it, 92 or 93, I think, when I was going to the hockey game when Toronto played LA.
Yeah.
And I was sitting in the seats, 3 seats down from the LA bench. And as much as I respect Wayne Gretzky, I was so pissed when the penalty and all that. So I didn't have a lot to do with Wayne at the time. And so I was a Toronto fan. Now, it'd be a different circumstance now with the relationship that I have with Wayne. But so that changed the whole world of my whole world. I'll always want to see Toronto win.
Of course.
And trust me, doesn't matter even the players. If Toronto ever won the Stanley Cup, and I'm hoping sometime, longest stretch now, I think, an NHL team has without winning. But Toronto wins, it's going to be huge for our company based out of Toronto.
Yeah. And we've always had a good relationship with MLSE as well. So there's that. So there are always reasons to cheer for the home team for us. Let's quickly go through the rest of the matchups here. Vegas versus Minnesota. Nothing. And that's just
and I really love Marc-Andre Fleury. I've known him for quite some time. We worked with him in Pittsburgh. Great guy. So I have a sentimental attachment to Las Vegas for that reason. Minnesota, nothing against them. It just doesn't do anything for our company.
Even like business or personal, it's just kind of one. Even though it's some good hockey. Now the next one, obviously we've already talked about this a little bit, but we have Toronto and Montreal. When you first heard that these were matching up against one another, you already had mentioned that was kind of bittersweet. You know, you love a Toronto-Montreal playoff matchup. Like
that would have been awesome in the finals.
That would have been amazing in the finals. I mean, you just can't ask for a better matchup. However, where Toronto fans and Montreal fans were ecstatic about it, even though you like both of the teams, or maybe because of that, you're almost dreading this series.
Yeah, dreading and loving. Like I said, if one of the teams is going to be out regardless. And really it comes down to, the longer they stay in the playoffs, the better it is for business. But on the other hand, it really is about who wins the Stanley Cup.
For sure.
And then everybody else, like the minute they get eliminated, everybody's moving on to the next one. So if you end up with a Las Vegas, Minnesota final, I go to the cottage and fish. So, I mean, there's nothing in it for us. So, I mean, it was great, the hype and all that stuff. And the good news was one of our teams was going to advance, but the bad news was one of the teams was going to get kicked out early.
It's funny. I remember having the conversation with you when Montreal had won, and I was like, I'm just furious. I can't believe Toronto did this again. Oh my God. Like I felt much better about this year, as a lot of fans were saying, not furious at the Leafs, just furious at the state of where we found ourselves yet again. And you had to kind of talk me down and be like, Mikey, Montreal is so good for us if they win. But me as a primarily Toronto, like on a purely personal level, Toronto and Pittsburgh fan, Montreal is always the quote unquote enemy,
Right.
And you have to constantly remind yourself, I haven't been doing this as long as you have, I don't think, to train myself to realize it's not always about what your gut is telling you need to cheer for. Sports mean an entirely different thing for us in this context. So it's kind of fun. The next one I want to talk about, Winnipeg versus Edmonton. I know your initial thought is Edmonton's taking this one, probably 4-0.
Right.
It ended up being the opposite. But we've dealt with both teams on a stadium level. We don't have quite the relationship with the players on those teams that we used to. But what were you thinking there? Either one is good.
We do have a good relationship with the team, with Edmonton.
Yep.
And Winnipeg.
We also did the opening ceremonies for Winnipeg.
We had Andrew Ladd when he was a captain, moved from Chicago, and we did all the opening memorabilia for the first game and worked with Canada Post on it.
As far as a team-specific promotion or project that we're working on, I think Winnipeg was one of the most impressive. When they came back and we were dealing with a lot of their opening day ceremonies, I remember I was working here. I couldn't believe the sales we were getting. People were so excited to have them back in their community.
They're filling that stadium big time.
Exactly. And it continues to be. The fans there are just a treat.
And we have to say that because my wife, your mother, is from Winnipeg.
That's right, from Selkirk. Yeah, there you go. Shout out to Selkirk and St. Andrews if any of our listeners are from out there. Yeah.
So Winnipeg was it was going to be. It's not a big market,
right?
I mean, if they win, any team in a city is rabid with rabid fans like Winnipeg is going to be good, but it's not Toronto, Montreal, Pittsburgh, New York.
For sure,
it isn't that. It's going to be that kind of business, and we didn't have a lot of players. Although we do work with Hellebuck, and we have some great relationships with a couple of the other players today.
It's also interesting too because I mean this is no different with Tampa Bay, but you are always, when a team wins, going to be competing against local options that they have, and there are a lot of local options, particularly around Edmonton. It's a big hockey culture. Maybe you don't have quite the number of options in Tampa Bay as you would, which is why they may outsource it a little bit. But when a team like Edmonton wins, or even Winnipeg, they have a lot of people right around them that are going to be like, hey, we're local, like come to us. And we have to give them a reason not to.
Well, there is a tendency for the West to want to deal with the West. Right. That's always been the way. They're not big on the East coming in and taking their business, et cetera. They're loyal to themselves, and I respect that. But the fact still remains that nobody really can ramp up like we do.
Right.
And nobody has the expertise. The local companies can do some picture framing. They can do some other things. They can put some product together. But Frameworth has all the licensing for images and pins, and we can create our own images and canvases and whatever it is that we can do. And we have the formula, which is 80% of it.
Right.
You got to be ready with all the products. I mean, we have to, if we're going to melt the ice and put it in a puck, we have to have those pucks in stock and ready to go, and they come from China.
Well, let's touch on that a little bit, because I'm once again, if you're watching on YouTube, holding up the acrylic puck that we would use to put the water, the melted ice from the arena in there. And now there are companies out there that could order the blank pucks. There are companies out there that could etch designs onto the puck. What we also have to bring to the table, because this is not just about us saying we're so much better than everyone else. There are necessary elements and components to this if you want to sell outside of what's called the local license of a team. And I want to get in the weeds here because I don't think a lot of people realize how this licensing side of things might work. Now we also need an NHL license just to etch, to use the machine that other people might have, to etch on a plastic that other people might be able to get. We need the relationship with the league, which we've established over the past years, to be able just to etch that logo on there, which is a whole other thing that may eschew other competitors from being able to even do the job in the first place.
They can't do it. They can't ramp up, which puts us in a unique position.
Right.
And I don't believe it's a Fanatics model. I don't believe it's the Upper Deck model to get into this kind of business, because it is really, really custom work, and that's not their thing. They're not into, custom designing. Look, I go out to meetings with the teams, and we have presentations months in advance sometimes. As soon as we know what the bracket is going to be, we start looking at it and say, okay, who do we need to talk to with each team?
Yes.
To be able to present them, and they're pretty impressed with the fact that we're ready to go.
Yeah.
You can't just wait for the team to win and then put your ideas.
It's too late
together.
at that point.
It's too done. Late. Yeah.
There was I remember to bring this back to video games, as I am wont to do on this podcast. There was an esports league that came to the forefront, the Overwatch League that came out. And for anyone who's listening, who also listens to the Retrograde podcast, my other video game podcast, thank you for joining us over here as well. And when that league started opening up, I had thought about reaching out to some of the licensing bodies to inquire into potentially obtaining a license to provide products for the Overwatch Esports League. All the different teams. Toronto was getting a team.
Me with that, yeah.
Yeah, and by the time we had found the right people to talk to, this is before the league even was established, they had essentially said, guys, this is like, we've got bids in for this, you're a little bit late to the party. What saved us was that, and Daniel Siegel, I believe was his name. I can't remember off the top of my head. He worked in licensing and did a lot of work with Wayne Gretzky through WG Authentic. So he knew about you and the company, and he sort of let our bid in if we wanted to kind of throw our hat into the ring. long story short, it involved some trading cards and all that stuff. So other companies got the license, and we sort of bowed out of it. But it's just interesting to see that even as someone who's in the know, like myself, I played the video game before the league was even made. Even then, it was too late. There are already conversations before the league even becomes official about who's going to handle the licensing. And if you're not there, then you're already too late.
Yeah, you have a reputation in the industry, so they come to you. And so many times I'll get calls from teams. I'm working with a number of teams now. The Kraken are we're speaking with.
Yep.
The Islanders we're speaking with, both new buildings going in. So there's a lot of things that are happening out there and they'll come to you. Even players, like proactively, agents will put players in touch with us because they need their jerseys framed and whatever. So you build a reputation in a niche market, and this is a custom market, this type of stuff. So it's big business, but it's also custom, and not everybody's suited to do it.
For sure. Now, you mentioned New York Islanders having a new building, and that brings us to the next matchup in the initial round, and that was New York Islanders versus Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, we've been talking to the Islanders. We know that they have some business coming our way with the new arena, and that we've been working on this project with them. However, they're up against our darlings in the Pittsburgh Penguins. What are your thoughts there? Are you thinking that even if the Islanders make it on, maybe there's a chance, or are you full on Pittsburgh in this one?
I could lie and say that I was hoping for both teams because they're good for us, but I can't. Everybody knows that I'm partial to the Penguins because of Sid, but in the event that Pittsburgh was eliminated, we had a good shot with the Islanders.
Right.
And, years ago, we had a relationship with DiPietro. We had an exclusive deal, and I used to go down, fly down to New York to see the Islanders, Terry Goldstein down there, and talk to him about, because they had to deal with us. So the way the contracts work and the CBA is that the teams
CBA being the collective bargaining agreement
with the NHL, is that the teams can ask the players for autographs for marketing purposes and charitable purposes.
Right.
But they have to confirm that they're not being resold in the stores. That's a whole source of income for the players that the Players Association didn't want to bastardize by letting the teams just ask for
as much as they could. Yeah.
Now, marketing is a very loosey-goosey word, so many of the teams take advantage of that. I mean, if you see some of the things that they're put in front of Sydney to sign for marketing purposes. And no, they won't be sold in the stores, but will they be sold to give to top clients so that they buy a boot? So it translates to money.
Sure.
And all that. So they got to be careful with that so they don't hurt the players' income on autographs.
Because from the other perspective, what we could say is that if the team is convincing a player through a purposeful misunderstanding of the word marketing to sign items which are then being used to dangle in front of prospective clients who will buy something through the team, our argument would be, wouldn't it be better to share some of that money with the player because you're using them as a carrot to kind of sign this? So why don't you buy a bulk amount of these jerseys? The player gets his bit. You get to still dangle that little carrot in front of the prospective client, and everyone is happy. That is what.
Well, that would be the smart move on the team's part. Some take advantage of the players, and some don't. And by example, when we did the Winnipeg Jets opening game, we had 3 different items that we offered as a memento, and each one included the ticket. One included a ticket, one included the ticket and the program, and one included the ticket and the program and an autograph from Andrew Ladd.
Right.
The team paid us because for the autographs. They didn't try and get them for free.
Right.
Some teams will, and then when the player finds out that he's been taken advantage of, then there's some resentment.
Yeah.
They don't. They're all making money, and the team makes money. The players make money, but what is written in the contracts is written in the contract.
That's fair. Now, getting to the next one, this was a great initial series, depending on who you were cheering for. But we have the Washington Capitals. We do a lot of work with Washington, actually, and the Boston Bruins. We also have had quite a history with them. Now, are you watching this one already? Washington being a huge rival of Pittsburgh, thinking, you know what? If Washington goes on, we could have a Pittsburgh Penguins, Washington Capitals classic matchup in the second round. Or are you rooting for that specifically, or where's your mind going?
I'll root for Washington because we have a great team relationship with products that we build for them. They give us with not only their hockey but their basketball.
We've done some of their season ticket gifting. We've done
So those are things that they come to us, and so never say anything bad about Washington. We don't have a relationship with Ovechkin, and he's the core of the products that you would do in the autograph side. So if it was Sydney against Alex, then again it's Sydney.
we know who we're
but
on,
but I would never. I mean, Washington certainly would be good for Frameworth.
For sure. Obviously, Boston won that one, so a little bit of a disappointment there. But we do have a decent relationship with the team, and that could have resulted when they won the Cup last time. We did
a whole season's ticket set with them over the years. It's funny because sometimes some of our reps come and go, and they have personal relationships with people down there. Right. I remember in Las Vegas at a trade show sitting with the whole Boston organization, and our rep that had it was quite a long evening and a very much longer morning the next day, going to a trade show and having to work in that condition. However, we did it. We always answer the bell.
You gotta do it. Now, in our next series, we have Carolina versus Nashville. Now, Carolina, we haven't done too much work with either team. However, we've had a great relationship with Dougie Hamilton throughout the years.
Dougie was one of our exclusive guys. Still work closely with them. It isn't a great market in terms of reselling autographs, unless they win the Cup.
Yeah.
So,
as was the case with Tampa, for example.
And sometimes, we can't buy enough from any one player when they move to a market like that we can sustain an exclusive deal, because we have to guarantee so much business. Sure. Otherwise, we're standing in the way of them making.
So I want to touch on that before you continue on your point. Hang on to that thought, because a lot of people may not know this as well. When we talk about exclusive relationships with the players, what that entails is an agreement that they will not sign autographs for any other company. However, we have to guarantee that we purchase a set amount, the equivalent of a certain dollar value every year.
Right.
Now, it's similar with licensing as well, where we have to guarantee that we are going to sell enough product that the royalties that we give to the NHL or the NHLPA or the Hockey Hall of Fame or the alumni is going to equal the minimum guarantee. And if you don't hit it, you have to pay the difference.
Comes out of our pocket. Right. And that's why most of the smaller companies don't do this.
It's a big gamble. Because what happens if the player gets injured? What happens if the team does poorly? What happens?
Right.
Yeah.
And when we have a great player and he moved to a bad market, then we're stuck with not only the stuff from the previous time, but with the player in a bad market.
Right.
And that's happened. We had Joe Thornton exclusively when he came to Boston years ago.
Right.
And that was probably the worst deal that I did. Nothing against Joe, because he's a great guy.
And we've continued.
We just
to deal
did
with
a signing with him, but Joe was in Boston, and I think 2 or 3 weeks later he got traded to San Jose, and we were stuck with $10,000 worth of product that we couldn't sell, because not only did he leave, but he left on not great terms. So nobody in Boston wanted anything to do with the
until
product.
Now it turns around and people forget a little bit. But there was a similar situation with, if you remember the playoff run that the Montreal Canadiens had, and they had 2 goalies to decide between Yaroslav Halak and Carey Price. And there was a big question: who are the Montreal Canadiens going to stick with? And
there was no question in my mind
that it was going to be.
Although if you talk to Alan Walsh, he would have disagreed with you at the time.
But here's the thing: is we agreed. The agent of Yaroslav Halak came to us and said, "Guys, he's staying." Like he made us think that there was a good chance he's staying. Take it with a grain of salt. An agent is going to try to look out for their player. Completely understand that. Rushed us into a signing. We do the signing. We purposely bring a lot of Olympic photos at the time, because Yaroslav Halak had just played in the Olympics there. And I think it was 2 days after the signing, it's announced that he had just been traded.
Well, bad on us. I mean, we've learned so much over the years. I mean, we almost jeopardized our whole company at one point, because we signed so many deals without. By the time we got our product ready and that the season was almost over.
Yes.
We missed the whole Christmas season.
Yeah.
And then we couldn't meet the guarantees. And
that
we
was,
had to,
we outlined that in, I think, episode 5 of this podcast, from signature chaser to industry changer, I think is what we called it. And it's pretty interesting because we were on a high with signing new players. And then this was the potential collapse. As there is in any industry, there's a bubble and then it bursts.
So you learn. And you learn that what you've got to be able to do is move enough product to at least recover your investment back, and then hope that the rest will sell through and the player doesn't get traded, et cetera. So that's
there was, before we move on from there, I had a funny story because I was at that signing. I think we did it in tandem actually with AJ Sports. I was there with Andrew Goldfarb of AJ Sports, and we were doing this one together along with the agent and Halak, and we remember put a photo in front of him. A 16 by 20 photo for him to sign. It was an overhead shot of him during the Olympics making what we thought was a save because it was a great looking shot. And as soon as we put the photo in front of him, he looks up at us like, really? And we're like, I know, it's a really great shot, right? He's like, the puck is in the net.
You didn't notice that it was behind him.
The puck was behind him already. So he was a good sport about it. He signed it, but that was funny. I remember specifically driving to the airport after that signing, and there was a piece of graffiti etched into my mind on the top of a building, just enormous letters, "Halak is God." And that was it. Like he had so much hype going for him.
He
there.
had a really good stretch there for a while.
Yeah.
Sure.
So that's we just went over Dougie Hamilton and got into a little bit of a tangent, but
great kid too.
Yeah, absolutely. He met him a couple times, just super down to earth. A lot of people don't know this. Insanely smart, an incredibly intelligent person. I mean, academically, a lot of people wouldn't know that or maybe hadn't heard it. And then we have the Battle of Florida. We have the Florida Panthers versus the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I feel like
Tampa,
we know your thoughts on that one. But
Tampa was obviously we talked about that already. We nobody really on Florida. I like to go down to Florida once a year when Pittsburgh plays down. Haven't done it for 2 years. We go to with the Crosbys. We make a weekend out of it, and we have dinner and party, and then go to the game, and it's great. But that's the only time I really care about Florida Panthers.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. They continue to put a team together that is insanely dangerous. And you know what? I remember hearing one of the parents of a player, I won't say who it was, but the parents of a player was telling me that the reason actually, no, it was a player themselves that was telling me the reason why Florida always does so well in the regular season is because obviously they have a lot of talent. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they don't. But is because players on other teams will often treat that stop in their schedule as somewhat of a vacation.
What do you think Las Vegas does so well? And Las Vegas is the worst for that because the players, it's always how do they say? It's always a home game for the
opposing team.
Opposing. Yeah. So you come to Las Vegas, and not only are the players prone to maybe stay up a little late, but they might stay up all night.
Yeah.
And they like to gamble, they like to party, and so it's they got to stay focused. And Florida's the same. They go out golfing.
Exactly. They're human beings.
Right.
Like they're in
the middle of winter, January here, and they can go down and practice in the morning, play golf in the afternoon.
Well, people maybe think that they're immune to that sort of thing. Oh, they're professionals. They can't do that. They got a game tomorrow. But we just talked about being at a trade show, staying up too late, and having to work through it. That is the equivalent of them working through it.
It's much more the case, much less the case now. Than it was in the old days.
Sure.
In the old days, if you talk to Eddie Shack and Bobby Hull and what went on when they went out of town, it's crazy.
Sometimes out of country in the case.
These guys are a lot more professional, but they are young kids, and they gotta let loose the odd time. And we just had a talk with Rocket, and he can tell you.
From last week's episode.
Right.
I think there's so much to that because we go through the entire bracket and we go team by team, and you can see how, when it comes to watching the NHL playoffs from the perspective of people who are in the business of sports, it is, I guess, what it kind of could be related to is like if you watch sports for the purposes of gambling, there are going to be different things. You're going to be betting on different teams and wanting other teams for different reasons other than just the home team should win. And what I'm trying to drive home here is that sports can mean so many things to so many different people. And when it comes to working within them, our allegiances change over the course of a season, our over the course of a playoffs. Even if someone gets hot and all of a sudden we're like, oh, like a player scores a great goal and we look at our ticket and, oh my God, we've signed this person exclusively. That's going to be enormous for us. Something like,
well, here's a good example. And it came up, John Tavares, exclusive to us. We go through years of him playing in New York Island with a mediocre team. Didn't really, he's a great player. Well, I saw a highlight the other night of what he did on the ice from top highlights, and so he was great and a lot of hype about him. And he goes to the island, not the greatest market. It's not a bad market when they're winning, but they weren't.
Right.
And then he comes to Toronto, and I'm just rubbing my hands.
It was a public
together.
holiday. Yeah,
it was like, wow, Tavares coming to Toronto. This is big news, and the team was turning around big time.
Or think about someone like Taylor Hall, for example. He's moved from team to team, and we have a great relationship with him right now. And, there's always some free agent market buzz with him because he's moved from a couple teams. And every time that comes to the forefront, we're thinking, okay, what's next? What if he does come to Toronto? What if he does go to Montreal?
There's always a pro and con. Some guys come to your team. If you're lucky, other guys go away from the team. And like I said, Tavares coming to Toronto was huge for us.
Right.
We had a number of different players going to other teams that weren't so good. And then even if they're going to a good team, you're still stuck with all the stuff from the previous team. And we still have a few Islander things for Tavares.
Sure.
So, you've got to move them at some point, and they go into the discount bin and whatever. So
or what we do, and this is, we'll get to this because we are running a little bit low on time, but in the case of someone like John Tavares, first overall pick, had some great stats in New York. What we did was take that jersey, using some of our new technology, embroider some of his stats, and make a limited edition jersey out of what otherwise may have been seen as a relic of the past, which is, him in the
Make
island.
it into something as a special collectible.
Right. And what I love about that is it's not giving it a fresh coat of paint and selling it as a new sports car. It's saying that, look, we understand that hype changes for a player based on the team that they're playing on, but every team that they have played for has an element of history. In the course of, Paul Coffey's career, you can have a Detroit jersey, you can have a Pittsburgh jersey, you can have an Edmonton jersey. Maybe at the time when he moved from one team to another, you're not going to want his old team's jersey, but over the course of their career, you need the collection.
Well, Patrick Waugh is a great example of that.
Sure.
He left Montreal on bad terms, but he won a Stanley Cup there and then moves over to Colorado. And so whatever negative feeling they had in Montreal about him, some of the fans love him regardless.
Yeah.
You saw him at the game the other night.
Yeah.
He becomes a hero again.
Exactly.
I don't think if Joe Thornton ever went back to Boston, he'd be a hero there. There's certain guys that wouldn't be.
But say he had gone on in his career, say he had won 3 Stanley Cups with San Jose, and finished off his career and like first ballot Hall of Fame or something along those lines. Then all of a sudden, if you want to complete your Joe Thornton collection, you need that Bruins jersey. And what we're trying to say here is, it's not always about waiting for their career to be over. There are reasons to own the jerseys from their past teams.
So an avid collector, they'll want a piece of everything that he's done.
Right.
But the guy that's just in and out and want to buy his favorite team, he's never going to buy a Boston jersey.
No,
he's going to buy the San Jose jersey. The real collector, the guy that is a Thornton fan,
or let's say
he's going to want a Toronto,
the professional or diehard collector, because you can collect in any way that you want. But yeah.
So no, I wouldn't put a lot of money in Boston Thornton jerseys right now.
Fair. You're not going to invest in it. It's not like Dogecoin.
And I'm not disparaging Joe at all. Jumbo is a great guy. Did a couple of big signings for us when he came to Toronto, and they sold out. So great,
almost
stuff.
immediately.
Yeah.
Great. So that we're coming to the end there. I hope you enjoyed that different sort of process that we had to kind of use the idea of the opening bracket as a framework to guide our conversation around what a company like ours is thinking over the course of the playoffs. It's very different than the relatively myopic view of a fan who is only looking at their one team. We are looking at this from an omniscient perspective. We are watching all the games and all the pieces moving in hopes to see them land in some way that's beneficial to us. Anything else to say before we go?
No. I've just I'm enjoying the summer. I'm hoping that the Habs taking another game make it really exciting. Maybe take it to a third. I'd love to see a 7th game there, regardless of who wins. But obviously, we have a little bit better opportunity with Montreal. But who knows? I called the last game, which was 3-0 going to 3-1. I just kind of had this funny feeling that, and I think in the back of my mind, I'm thinking Tampa would, and again, it's better for us if Tampa wins at home because all the assets from the arena are a lot easier to get.
Oh, that's fair.
So, if we had to go to Montreal and ask for the nets and the things for a losing team to give to the winning team, it's a little trickier.
Oh, see, I just quickly, I want to touch on that because when Tampa won the Cup last year, it was in the bubble. And therefore, they had no control, either team, over who owned the rink boards or the glass. And this, it all had to be purchased from a third party, shipped over, cut down, shipped back. Yeah. It was an entire mess. But now, with hockey returning to each team's home arena, maybe that'll be a little bit easier.
I think in the back of their mind, I know that they were trying hard to win in Montreal.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
but in the back of their mind, I'm thinking, okay, wouldn't it be nice to win at home? And we got a little cushion here. But way back in their mind. They're not going to take it. Because if they ever lose the next game and have to go back to Montreal, it's a whole different story.
That starts to feel your neck a little bit. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. Brian Ehrenworth, President of Frameworth. I am Mikey Ehrenworth, host of the Sign Off Podcast, and this is us signing off. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we made it to the end of yet another episode. Thanks again so much for joining us. You can find videos of all of our episodes on YouTube by searching the Sign Off Podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter at Frameworth Sport or Instagram at Frameworth Sports. And hey, if you're not sick of me yet, you can find me on Twitter over at Retrograde Mikey, or you can always find me embarrassing myself over on Instagram at Ehrenworth. The Sign Off is a proud product of Fadoo Productions and Sad Styles Productions. Executive producers Mikey Ehrenworth and Andrew Bascom. Until next week, this is Mikey Ehrenworth, signing off.
Furnished by Sad Styles Productions.
Get into it.